This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe. This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, welcome in everybody to another live episode of the Pit Press Live. I am your host, Eric Moulton, and we've got a loaded show this evening. We got North Dakota State joining up with the Mountain West Conference. That news broke yesterday, it came to fruition today. Really interesting stuff. I think a lot of people are excited around the league to invite, FCS, they won the last 10 out of the last 15 national championships at the FCS level. So they come with a lot of pedigree. So we have a lot of excitement there. Second part of the show, we'll be recapping the Boise State upset of New Mexico in the pit on Saturday night. I know, Nick, you were there. Ed, I think you were also there. I had to watch from home. We're kind of dealing with some sick kiddos in my area. And then the last part of the show, we'll be joined by Go Lopes Radio founder Brendan Williams. Brendan Williams covers the program pretty extensively. He's actually written some editorial pieces for us on the Pit Press website. So I'm really excited to get him on and recap, or at least preview, round 2 of GCU and New Mexico. UNM heads to Phoenix to play the Lopes there. Really kind of, I wouldn't call it intimidating atmosphere, but I know that they carry a lot of weight there, 7,000 or 8,000 fans, and they get rowdy, man. So lots to get to tonight, but before we jump into that, let's get introduced to tonight's panel. Voice of the Western New Mexico Mustangs and the Lobo fans since 1970, Mr. Ed Nunez. Ed, how's it going, man? How you been?
Going good. It's my wife and I were able to enjoy the game on Saturday. There's times I want to take, I love sitting on press row. Nick and I really enjoy, the watching it and sharing it with your son was a lot of fun at the Utah State game. But Saturday, my wife and I wanted to take it in, and disappointing. And I know we'll get all into it. I was really hoping that they'd be able to pull it off, but we'll get all into that. But yeah, I'm doing well, Eric.
Good to hear, man. And the better half of the Nunez duo, the attorney, beat writer, basketball coverage, and big-time contributor for the Pit Press, Mr. Nick Nunez. Nick, what's up, man?
Eric, what's going on, man? Good to hear from you. I don't know about the better half. Once again, I got to give that one to my dad, but doing well, man. Obviously, I shared the sentiment of a lot of Lobo fans. 2 tough losses in the pit last week for this UNM men's basketball team that we adore and that we follow religiously. I think they're going to bounce back. Aside from that, Super Bowl yesterday was kind of a thunker. The game itself, I know New England made a little score and rally in the fourth quarter, but man, a lot of the time these Super Bowls are super boring to watch. And yesterday, for the most part, I liked the Bad Bunny show. Can't speak for everybody. If you didn't like it, I get it. But Eric, all is well, man. Looking forward to the game on Wednesday between UNM and GCU.
Yeah, man, don't know how I missed that one. My wife is through and through Seattle Seahawks fan. My mom's also a Seahawks fan. My wife lived in Seattle for like 9 years, so she was around for the first Super Bowl, obviously not around for the second one, but it was a fun time watching that game, and I was very much a fan of the halftime show as well. But guys, let's get into it. Let's just some news and notes kind of around the league. Let's specifically get into North Dakota State kind of joining the Mountain West. All right, guys, so the announcement came out yesterday, the day before. North Dakota State joins the Mountain West. Looks like their entry fees into moving up from the FCS level to the FBS level is going to be pretty steep. They're looking at a $5 million transfer fee just to move up divisions. But then the Mountain West is looking to bring them in, and North Dakota State's going to have to come up with $12.5 million just to join the league. And North Dakota State, man, I think the talks from what I've been hearing, some of the podcasts I've been listening to, articles I've been reading, kind of say that these talks kind of picked up more recently within the last week and a half, so they weren't had very long. But North Dakota State was fully bought in, they were fully invested, and they came up with the money really fast. So over the weekend, once those rumors started coming about and the announcement was made, I know that at the halftime of the men's basketball game at North Dakota State, the school president presented a check that came from some of the donors at North Dakota State. I'm not sure the exact name. I think it's like the Green and Yellow Group or the Green and Yellow Foundation. They issued a check to the athletic department for $6.5 million to aid in that and to that transfer fee. So I think their fan base is just as excited as ours. But I want to get your guys' take. And Ed, since you're the senior of the show, I'm going to hand it over to you first. I mean, what was your initial reaction when you heard the news that North Dakota State was going to be joining the Mountain West as a football-only member?
I think what my question being, when Utah State and Boise State and Colorado State, and San Diego State leave, what was Gloria Narvaez going to do? We were at the Mountain West Conference media day in Las Vegas, and you got to be impressed with her. She was talking about the league, its foundation, its stability, what they were going to do going forward. And I think this is a great ad. They brought Northern Illinois in, UTEP for basketball. But if you look at this edition today, they North Dakota State, the Bison have won 10 of the last 15 football championship subdivision FCS national titles. They've registered a 90% winning percentage, 198 and 22. They've also recently finished in the top 5 of the stats performance, top 5 in AFCA FCS coaches poll. So it's a great ad. It's a great addition for football. They're going to be competitive right away. They've also had 13 selections in the NFL draft in the last couple of years, including 3 in the first round. So if you look at it, in Gloria Narvaez, hopefully we can get her back on. This is a conference. Now, there's a lot of questions even about the Pac-12. You know, is the Pac-12 on solid footing? The teams that are leaving, did they get the agreements that they were promised? The Boise States and the Utah States, and are they going to be on solid footing there? And a lot of people want New Mexico to get out of the Mountain West, but I've got to give Gloria Narvaez a lot of credit here. I think this is a great addition, and they should be competitive right away. And again, with these teams leaving, Coach X staying here, where does that leave New Mexico as far as competitiveness in the new Mountain West? I think New Mexico is going to be – Coach X has had a great recruiting season, a great offseason. New Mexico did lose players, but some of the players that he added, I was very impressed. I can't wait to see them. Saw somebody tonight that I went to UNM with. He's going to buy season tickets, and he hasn't bought season tickets in a long time. So I think it's a great ad, Eric. I'm very excited. They should be very competitive right away.
Yeah, and this news comes on the heels of the Mountain West new media deal announcement, right? They're more kind of keeping the old CBS partners. They also have the Fox partnership, but I think the one that's most interesting to me is the streaming service in Kisui, because I know currently they're working with like the Phoenix Suns and some other professional sports teams. So I think they're looking at really redeveloping the Mountain West app. They're going to end up transferring that to like a paid subscription. But a lot of those fees are going to go back to paying the schools that you follow. So UNM will be able to benefit from that from a revenue standpoint. But Nick, once that news broke yesterday, what was your knee-jerk reaction?
A lot of different ways you can spin it, right, Eric? You know, I think from a football standpoint for UNM, it strengthens their strength of schedule. If you look at North Dakota State's Sargent, and I could be pronouncing that wrong, I do apologize, but it's kind of like football, college Division I football, FBS football, their version of like Ken Palm. And in that particular metric, again, I believe it's the Sargent rankings. North Dakota State came in ranked at 40, higher than any current Mountain West member. So their strength of schedule has been really good. My dad listed off all the stats. I echo all that, Dad. You know, a team that's won 10 of the last 15 FCS football championships. They've got a 6-2 record against FBS schools over the last few seasons. Had a close game against Colorado when Colorado was 9-4. So I think from a strength of schedule perspective, it's an improvement. I know there were some Lobo fans like, we're pulling from the FCS ranks and this Mountain West Conference is dog poop and we want to go to the Pac-12. I get that. I think there are definitely some financial reasons and exposure reasons for UNM to get to a better conference. For right now, the commissioner, Gloria Narvaez, is doing her best to put competitive teams on the field and on the court. And in football, find me another, group of 6 FCS football program other than NDSU. I think they're kind of towards the top 5. So I think it's a great get for the Mountain West Conference for a lot of reasons. Another thing we didn't talk about a ton, Eric, was the Fargo Dome that they play in. Seats 19,000. Get on X. Maybe we can share some footage. They've got a pretty good record at the Fargo Dome, 144-24 since 1993. So they don't lose a lot of games up there. Great atmosphere. So all in all, excited by the addition of North Dakota State, Eric.
Yeah, I think the end goal for a lot of these FCS programs that have the desire to move up a level is obviously the introduction to more TV money, some of that rev share. And then you look back in what James Madison did this year by making the college football playoff, or was it last year that they did? But having access to that in terms of a solid football program with a really strong tradition and an organization, they do it professionally. And on the point of Gloria Navarez, and I won't beat this horse dead, but I thought she's done a really good job considering that the cards that she was dealt and the cards that the Mountain West was dealt, because the Pac-12, Oregon State, and Washington State came and pulled basically the rug underneath them, and behind a lot of closed doors, had some conversations, and just with not a lot of insincerity or a lot of sincerity with how they handle business. But she was not only able to keep the Mountain West together, but now they're slowly starting to redevelop and solidify itself. And I think people are even talking about maybe next year, the year after, the Mountain West adding 11th and maybe a 12th football member. So not only did they almost go to in a non-existence type state, they're actually rebuilding, and they almost look to be in a better situation than Pac-12 right now. And I think a lot of that could be debatable, but we could probably dedicate a whole podcast or a whole summer of podcasts talking about stuff like that. But enough with the SDSU stuff coming in. Let's get to kind of more of the meat and potatoes of the show and Lobo basketball. All right, guys, so the Lobos fall on Saturday night, 91-90, in somewhat of a gut-wrenching fashion. I thought they came out, played really well in the first half. From an offensive standpoint, they were efficient, they were scoring, they were knocking down threes, but, I mean, you just run into a buzzsaw with Boise State. I think as of recent, Nick, you talked about it in your preview, Boise State had been playing really well as of late, and they just ran into a really hot team, right? Like, how could anyone have expected Drew Fielder to come out, he plays the 5, come out and make 5 threes, but then Dylan Andrews, who's been on somewhat of a heater lately, just completely turned it on and torched the Lobos for 33 points on Saturday. Nick, I'm going to pass it right back to you, man, because I know you were at the game. What was your overall analysis of the game Saturday?
Yeah, man, for sure. I think it's a pretty tight first half. UNM had the lead for most of it, and then Boise State plays better down the stretch, has a 3 or 4 point lead going into the half. So I thought they were pretty even. Boise State hit threes in both the first and the second half, but the 7 threes that they had in the second half all came in that 9-minute stretch from 20 minutes to about 11 minutes or so. And, Eric, I think we don't need to beat this horse dead. We all kind of know what happened in a sense. UNM was, having to overcompensate for Boise State's size in part. Eric Olin did acknowledge that they had to help in the paint to take some of those looks away. It's a pick your poison situation. Fielder came into the game shooting 35% from 3, so he wasn't lighting it up. And Olin made it sound like that he was willing to give those shots up to a certain extent. But, Dad, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm having some technical difficulties right now. Otherwise, I would show the footage of some of Fielder's catch and shoot threes. He's a little too uncontested for me after the third one. When he starts making 3, I think, we saw that from UC Riverside, that Andrew Harrison guy with the afro, lit us up for like 4 or 5 straight shots. It felt like that again. And you heard groans from the pit crowd. People were not happy that we were giving up so many 3-point shots. So defensively, that's my kind of big takeaway is they just, I understand sticking to the game plan. I get that. But at a certain point, if you're getting lit up like that, you got to make some adjustments. Dad, you and I were talking. Fielder got another pretty good look on a pick and pop. I think it was Bullion and Luke Hopt who were not on the same page. He missed it. But, they didn't give up any threes after the 11-minute mark. But their 3-point defense, I think they just needed to adjust a little bit earlier, Eric. That being said, they did tie the game 80-80 on Jake Hall's left corner 3-pointer and had a chance. They were just going back and forth. Luke Hopt misses some free throws. But, I don't want to ramble here, Eric. I know I'm kind of going on and on. I'll say this and then I'll shut up. We can't be mad at Luke Hopt because he missed those free throws. He did so much this game, and he wasn't the only one. I think Albury missed some second-half free throws. Bullion, UNM finishes 15 of 21 from the free throw line. But anyway, Luke Hopt had a phenomenal game, man. All in all, my takeaway, they played bad defensively. With their 3-point defense. They gave up too many points per possession. And then they had a chance down the stretch, very similar to the San Diego State game, and just couldn't make the winning plays, man. So hats off to Boise State. You might be on mute, Eric.
Oh, sorry about that. Ed, coming into this game, if you would have told me that UNM was going to shoot 52% from the field, 46% from 3, and still lose, I would have told you were crazy, man. I don't know. What did you see out there on Saturday?
They, if you look at the stats, all the stats favored UNM. The rebounds were even. Lobos New Mexico only turned it over 5 times. Boise State turned it over 10. Points in the paint, UNM won that. Boise State, and here's the big one, 26 of 27 from the line. That's unheard of, man, 96.3%. A couple of those don't go in, UNM wins. But I think Nick's article the next day, hand down, man down, told you all you needed to know. The drop coverage, and Nick, you alluded to this. They're having to rotate out a little bit deeper. But look, I said this too, and I said this to Ray Rodriguez, who will be our guest hopefully later this week, the former Siebel and Hodden head coach. Boise State set good picks. New Mexico was fighting through them. At one point, they had I think Felder posted on the block. They threw it over to net, and they threw it right to Felder's hand. Tenet's fronting him. Then you got a backside help. Went right to Felder, put it in, it scored. Throw it to where he lives. You've got a size advantage. Take advantage of it. They did. Those threes that they hit, you're thinking, hey, they're going to miss one of them. They shot, and look at Andrews lit us up, man. 33 points. He hit 5 of 10 from 3. Felder was 5 of 10. And they shot with confidence, 50% shooting from 3 from both of them. And I thought, Nick, you're right. I thought a couple of those were contested, but a lot of them weren't. Late hand down, man down, like you said. I think of Mark Jackson when he used to say that on the NBA all the time. So, and Nick is right about, when does Pop score 30? You don't want him to score 30. You want more balance, right? You want more balance amongst everybody else. He did it. He did what he had to do. The missed free throw was tough, but I think the other guys that we haven't been as effective lately is Albury. Albury hasn't been as effective. With 2 assists, it hasn't been stealing the ball as much as that. Pressure defense hasn't been as effective, which helps you slow down the clock, make them take shots deeper in the clock. That hasn't really been a factor lately. And we've mentioned Antonio Chol. I was encouraged when he went to the hole on his first 2 baskets. I said, hey, he can attack. He did. He attacked the rim and scored on layups. Then he went back to the perimeter hunting threes. At 6'9", they need more production from him. And a couple of people have opined that he's looking over his shoulder now when he makes a mistake and he's being subbed out. When we looked at him in the preseason, I thought this guy's a perfect fit. He shoots threes. He's athletic. He's long. He's lanky. They haven't got much out of him lately. And they still almost came away with the win. But I still give Boise State and Leon Rice a lot of credit for their game plan. And one of the things today is has people figured out New Mexico defensively? Have they figured them out? New Mexico, and Eric Olin said, got to go back to the drawing board. Those are tough losses at home. And they've got another tough one on the road against Grand Canyon on Wednesday. So that's what I saw. I think my son pretty much, talked about the drop coverage and the rotations were a little bit late. You have a longer way to rotate when you're in the paint. You got to go out and try to get a hand up. And they, you know what, to Boise State's credit, they blistered, man, from three-point land and from the free throw line. And, just not enough for New Mexico to overcome. So they've got to get ready for Grand Canyon on Wednesday.
2 things for you here, Nick. Just give you time to collect your thoughts. But your dad mentioned it, right? Luke Hopt. We've been talking about Luke Hopt's game as kind of the well-rounded guy, the one that's not going to give you too much of anything, but he's going to give you everything, right? But the connector is the way that Eric Olin refers to him. But he finishes with 30 points, man. Career high. He goes 5 for 7 from the free throw line. He hits 3 threes. Again, really impactful on the boards. He finishes with 6 boards, but 8 fouls drawn. He was really aggressive in getting into the lane, something that we come accustomed to with Dayton Albury, getting into the lane and finishing around the basket. And Ed just did talk about that. Albury hasn't been able to do that as of late. I think that's kind of been a key for a lot of these defenses, just kind of keen on Albury and keeping him out of the lane. But that's where Hop thrived in this game, and I think it's because he might have a little bit of a size advantage. But what did you see from Luke Hopt, and does he give you kind of more hope as maybe being like an efficient scoring threat for this Lobos team kind of coming down this stretch?
He was feeling it in the second half, Eric, against Boise State. You knew it was his night when he makes that 3 at the end of the shot clock, that desperation heave, and it goes in. You could tell from my angle it was going to be his night. In the second half, Coach Olin talked about this in the postgame press conference, said that Boise State at times was switching defensively. And so I think Luke got the matchups he wanted on a shorter player, and he took advantage of them and scored at the rim, scored through contact. He finished 11 of 17 from the field. So, Eric, and then he's 3 for 4 from 3. He knocked down a couple threes, like you said, but going to the basket, he was very aggressive. I think he can continue to score the basketball for UNM. I think his scoring, even before this game, we saw him against San Diego State. He knocked down 3 threes against San Diego State. Coach Olin talked about in the postgame press conference, sometimes he scores 3 points, and sometimes he scores, double figures, but he's doing a lot of everything. Think about what he had to do defensively. Luke Hopt had to match up with Dylan Andrews and Javen Buchanan in 2 very different defensive roles on the floor. So Coach Olin was asking so much of Luke Hopt on both ends of the floor. So the way that he played, Eric, on both ends was phenomenal. It was a legendary performance. And hats off to Luke Hopt, man. I think he can become more of an offensive scoring threat for the Lobos.
Hey, I don't want to go back to the shooting a little bit. I mean, this is something that we saw last year with Boise State. Peanut Carmichael lit the Lobos up last year. I think he had like 5 or 6 threes. He came off the bench, just really kind of unpredictable in that game, but he wasn't the one that took the game over in this one, but he definitely did contribute. I think he ended up finishing with 3 threes himself. But as a team, Boise State hits 15 total threes in this game. They actually tie a Pitt record for an opponent in made threes at the Pitt. How much of this game was really kind of the lack of focus on the defensive side for the Lobos, or was it just Boise State making shots, man? Because it wasn't just a couple guys, it was pretty much all of them.
You know what? I think once a couple of those went down, and somebody just mentioned the loud groans after they made kill shots. You know, Jeff Grammer's always talking about kill shots New Mexico makes. They made a lot of kill shots. Boise State did on Saturday, and you know what? You were there, and the Pitt fans after the Lobos brought it closer. You know, they're getting up, you know, yelling, and and Boise State answered every one of those, man, with a basket, a 3 or a 2. They silenced the crowd. So I just think, Eric, when they got Andrews was magnificent. He's a good player, man. Hit mid-range, and I mean, he's got nothing but cotton on those shots, nothing but net, hardly hitting any rim. And he looked good, smooth, right? Smooth at the free throw line. He looked really good. Best player on the floor on Saturday night, along with Luke Hopt. So I just think when a team gets in confidence, especially on the road, it's hard, the Pitt's one of the hardest venues to win at, and Leon Rice knows that. There's a great story, and Jeff Grammer had a story in the Journal about when Leon Rice was an assistant at Gonzaga, and they came in here in 2002. New Mexico lost in overtime when Marlon Palmer, a blast from the past, played for the UNM and had 30 points that night, and UNM dropped that one. So Leon Rice knows all about the Pitt. He knows about the Pitt, and I think it's for some, it's better to come win here. And once they hit Felder, I thought for sure a couple of those shots, I'm like, that's not going in. He squared up, followed through, looked good. They've shot with confidence. So I think once the shots started rolling downhill like that, they shot 54% from the field and 42% from the 3-point land, 96.3 from the free throw. That tells you everything you need to know. You know how it is, Eric. People will say, and Nick, we got to hit our shots. If the shots fall, we'll be okay. The shots fell, they were okay.
Yeah, and the Lobos get contributions from pretty much the same familiar trio. Uriah Tenet comes off the bench. He finishes with 14 points. He goes 4 for 4 from the free throw line. Jake Hall, again in double figures with 19 points. He goes 3 of 4 from the free throw line, 4 of 10 from deep. But a somewhat quiet game for Tomislav Buljan. He finishes with 7 total points, but he cleaned up the glass with 9 rebounds. So, and offensively, this team had it clicking. I felt like they were efficient. I think they fell a little short there. It's in critical moments at the end, specifically from the free throw line. But offensively, this team found what they were looking for. It was just the defensive side to where things kind of fell apart for the Lobos and weren't able to recover, weren't able to restrict Boise State as much as they would have hoped for. But here was a stat that came from Steve Kirkland over at UNM. Hall scored in double figures for the 10th straight game, tied for the 3rd longest streak ever by a UNM freshman and the longest in Mountain West era. I think he's continuing to be kind of the focal point for a lot of these defenses, and although that he is the focus, he still continues to produce. And I mean, really impressive. I don't think we ever fall short of singing his praises. But Nick, I'll hand over one last comment or question to you before we bring Brendan Williams on from Go Lopes Radio, who is waiting patiently backstage. But your dad touched on it earlier. Antonio Chol sees 25 minutes. He gets 2 points and 1 rebound. And you got to think that you've got to get way more out of a guy like that, because he's seeing so minutes, but because of the frame, because of the length, because of the size advantage, the athletic ability. What's going on there, man?
Yeah, Antonio Chol, excuse me. Antonio Chol has he's averaged 3 points per game in his last 3 games. He broke his streak of being the only player in the Mountain West to knock down a 3-point shot. He had that streak for, I think, all the way up until 3 games ago. So for about 21 games of the season, Antonio Chol was knocking down a 3-point shot. Jeff Grammer asked about this at the press conference today. He asked, what's going on with Antonio Chol? Why is he not shooting the ball as effectively offensively? And, Coach Olin has come out and defended every single one of his guys anytime somebody asks. And he answered no differently today. I wasn't there, but I did watch the video. And he said, we as a coaching staff, didn't use those words exactly, I'm paraphrasing, but we need to find him better quality looks offensively. When Chol is, when he is effective, he's catching and shooting a 3-point shot and he's making it, you know. A lot of his threes, it's not like he's breaking some dude down and then pulling up. It's usually off catch and shoot. He hasn't gotten the volume of 3-point attempts that he normally does. And I think his minutes, at least the last couple games, you know, Coach Olin has not had him in the game. He did put him in for Luke Hopt when Luke Hopt fouled out, but I think his minutes are going down in crunch time, and rightfully so, man. You know, we saw him against Utah State. First basket of the game for UNM is an Antonio Chol take to the basket. So we've seen flashes of his ability to do that. There are times when he drives to the basket and he just looks uncomfortable. Dad, I think you and I were talking. He drove baseline against Utah State. I think it was in the first half, and he tried to throw a pass in traffic. It wasn't even close. I mean, it was just such an unfundamental pass that it was like, I can't believe, like, you know, he shouldn't be making that turnover. So, yeah, he's struggling a lot offensively, Eric, and I'm not sure what it's going to take. You know, I think he just needs to get his confidence back. Hopefully, if he's knocking down 3-point shots and can be somewhat of a defensive asset with his length, hopefully we can get just a little bit more from him. I think you're on mute, Eric.
I think to say now is not the time to contemplate on the pass. I think they've got a quick turnaround. Head to Phoenix on Wednesday to play at GCU, which is an interesting matchup from our perspective. I know that UNM got them here at the Pit, but traveling, going on the road for a true road game in a hostile environment for the first time at GCU is going to be tough. It's going to be challenging. They play well there, and GCU has been playing well as of late. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. Ed, it was nice chatting it up with you, but we are going to... Any last thoughts on that, Ed? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, just one real quick thought. I think people were asking about Chris Howell. Nick, you were at the press conference, and Coach Olin said, hey, we're at the point now where it's going to take him, it might take us a long time to ramp him up and get him back in game shape. So I think they're looking to try to get him a medical red shirt. I don't think he's going to, the way Coach Olin was talking, I don't think he's going to come back this season. But Luke Hopt, his eligibility is up. And I think Coach Olin is thinking, hey, I'm losing one connector. I'll keep the other connector for next year if he's granted a medical red shirt. It doesn't seem to me, the way Coach Olin talked about it, that he'll be coming back. So they're going to have to go without Chris Howell the rest of the year. That's just what the talk that I heard.
Yeah, Ed, one last question before we transition or go to a quick commercial break. What's your outlook for Wednesday at GCU?
Going to be a tough one. You know, you mentioned GCU is a tough place to play. They've got 7,000, 8,000 people. That's another great addition to the conference from Gloria Narvaez. New Mexico badly needs this one. They've lost 2 in a row. So they beat GCU pretty good up here in Albuquerque. But you know what? Remember, real quick, Jeff Grammer said that they figured it out. People figured out New Mexico. Let's see. Bryce Drew's a heck of a coach. So, New Mexico has their work cut out for them. It's going to be a tough one there at GCU on Wednesday.
Well, we are going to take a quick commercial break, guys. And when we get back, we'll be joined by Go Lopes Radio founder Brendan Williams. You are watching the Pit Press Live.
This is your year to ring in the deals and ring in the keys to your brand new ride during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford. Like a new 2025 Ford F-250 Super Duty with 0% APR for 60 months. Or a new 2025 Ford Bronco Sport. Just $495 a month lease for 36 months with no money down. This is your year, so drive into 2026 the right way during our Ring in the Savings event at Capital Ford in Santa Fe.
Hey, welcome back to the Pit Press Live. I'm Eric Moulton, and as you can see, we've got a special guest joining us tonight, all the way from Phoenix, Mr. Go Lopes Radio himself, Brendan Williams. Brendan, thanks for joining us back on the Pit Press, man. How are you?
Of course, doing good, guys. I'm not sure if you've seen college basketball tonight at all. I thought about pulling to Darren Peterson. I know you guys wanted to have me on the show tonight, but in case you saw, he decided to sit out about 30 seconds before the game started with the flu. So thought about maybe pulling the same thing and maybe, cracking open a cold beer on the couch and leaving you guys on red. But no, in all seriousness, guys, excited to be here. Wednesday's looking really good. It feels like Mountain West has been delivering the last few weeks, kind of up to its usual behavior. So really excited to chat about Wednesday with you guys. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think us, Lobo Nation, are really excited to get out there and true road game and just kind of experience that road atmosphere. And again, Ed did mention it, like it's just a really solid new addition to the Mountain West Conference that I think a lot of people it's going to develop into a newfound rivalry, which is what a lot of people are excited about. But I want to get to some questions, Brendan. I know that we're going to link up. We actually got some articles kind of on the way, some previews. We actually have some Q&A that we sent over to Brendan yesterday to kind of get up on our website so we can learn more about what's been happening in the GCU world as of late. But Brendan, so Lope Nation and the Pit, right? Two iconic just venues, really exciting. I know that GCU hasn't been as around nearly as long, but when GCU traveled to the Pit in the first meeting, they fell to the Lobos 87-64 in the famous Bryce Drew ejection game. I think Bryce Drew might actually have somewhat more of a under controlled demeanor about him this time around, but he's got his home atmosphere to kind of fall back on. What does your kind of outlook look like for GCU the second time around with Lobos traveling out to Phoenix?
Man, well, if you would have asked me about early morning Saturday, I would have said fantastic. And then Saturday happened, and it felt like, I was kind of joking with some people. The premise online was you're not really part of the Mountain West until you lose a game to UNLV that you shouldn't. And yeah, Saturday was, very disappointing. Like there's literally no way around it. Bryce had some tough words post game. I thought, were very fair. I think there's just, it's just kind of been this team. Like you're going on 2 or 3 weeks of really good basketball. Things are trending. They kind of answered the bell after they lost at the Pit, and, they beat Utah State at home, San Diego State at home. And then I don't know, man, they go to UNLV and it was really bad. Like it was really bad. I honestly, I think I would put that one in a worse, I'd probably grade it worse than that Colorado State game. There was that one big run against Colorado State at home without their two of the three best players. GCU loses that game. Okay. But Saturday just was really bad from kind of all the important things you want to see. They did not do any of those. And so hopefully it's a one-time thing, flush it, move on. And, they'll come out Wednesday. We've seen them answer the bell a few times this season, but yeah, I think a little deflated. They get the main Fox, nod as well. Like that was an exciting thing. If you're here in Phoenix, right, it's the golf tournament over the weekend. It's like GCU's on main Fox. The weather's perfect. And then you watch the game and it was just deflating. So, but you gotta just move on to the next. And so excited for Wednesday. Lopes need a little bit of revenge, and hopefully they learn from that first game. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from that game. And I've been telling people, like, I think we're going to get a good idea on both these teams by the first media timeout. Is where are the Lobos after their last 2 losses, and where's GCU after that UNLV? Like, I think we're going to have a really good idea literally by the first TV timeout. You're going to be able to tell kind of energy and everything. So, yeah, well, I guess we'll get some more answers then, but really looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. Well, that's the thing about the Mountain West in conference play. You get a home and away game, and usually that second game, that matchup it could swing anyway, and it's just kind of another night in the Mountain West, right? Not to take anything away from Tom Moser and BJ Rains, but looking at some matchups that just kind of a little compelling to me. Owusu Nane has just been on fire lately. I know that you've kind of been ringing his bell a lot lately for kind of potential pick for the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. He's actually really picked it up. But even on the offensive side, he's knocked down threes. He's been really efficient. Kind of that glue guy, brings a lot of energy. I know that some comparisons kind of look at him as like a Draymond Green type character without some of the antics. But he's going up against Bouillon, who, I mean, he's kind of been a double-double machine for UNM as of recent, or at least mostly in conference play. The second time around, how would you kind of look at that matchup heading into Wednesday night?
Yeah, the game one, that was kind of one of the more interesting storylines because you really don't have a great read on how Bouillon is against GCU because of the foul trouble. You know, GCU had some of their guys in foul trouble as well. So there wasn't a ton of rhythm down low. And then obviously the big story was Rock coming in and being this pick and pop, you know, sort of crazy threat. He's blocking shots. And so he was really effective, but it's an interesting matchup. You know, Nana on Saturday, every other single guy that played in that game for GCU, I thought the effort was pretty bad across the board. And Nana, per usual, he's got one speed and it's all he can do. And I don't know if you can ever accuse him of not showing up and playing. You know, maybe he's going to take a bad shot here or there, but he was awesome on Saturday. He was hanging out a little close to the basket on offense too, which was great. Obviously, you know, he's making his threes the last few weeks, but he's getting to the rim and getting around the rim. We've seen some floaters. That's been really good, but he's just been a terror on the defensive end, and he can kind of guard 1 through 5 ish. So I'd expect to see him on Bouillon a little bit. And, you know, the way Nana plays, he's this mixture of so cerebral. And I always say it's because I did these commitment impact videos and in the summer, and that's when you kind of just watch them and I just kind of react to what we're getting in a player. And because he's this tweener, he's just been a tweener his whole life. He's like 6'8", 6'9". He's not a big guy, but he can't play on the wing. He's just had to like find other ways to contribute and do little things. He's so smart. It's like right place, right time, crazy motor. And that's how he would try to win that matchup, right? He's going to be giving up a little bit of size without a doubt. But, you know, if he's going to be down there banging, like he's really smart. He knows the right things to do. He's been really good defensively. You know, he's even great Saturday. You know, the Lopes guards were really struggling out there on Dre Gibbs, Lawhorn. But, you know, he was really, really incredible. I think he had 4 steals. And so he's been a real force of nature. You know, and I think what we're starting to see with him is that I think this might be Nana's team. And I don't think that's a bad thing, you know, versus like maybe a Jaden Henley or someone else. But I think that this team is maybe at its best when it has the identity of Nana with everything he brings to the table. And I get it. Maybe he's not the sexiest guy. And he's not, you know, dropping 35 points. But I think he's been such a good tone setter and been a big storyline over the last few weeks. And even at UNLV, he was really good. So I'm excited to see, you know, kind of how he comes out. He's going to want some revenge as well. He didn't play great at the Pit. So I think a little opportunity for him to get back there as well. So yeah, looking forward to a good matchup there. They're going to be banging. And the hope is, you know, let's maybe not have the refs maybe be, you know, as involved. Yep. I gave my, you know, I think you guys react to this as well. I gave my thoughts. Like, you can't complain about the refs. You know, like the double technical, I thought was really poorly timed and unnecessary. SDSU didn't get to complain about the refs, you know, when they lost at GCU. So you can't do that. But, you know, I think the best case scenario is maybe they're not as involved and you can kind of let the guys settle it. But yeah, I'm looking forward. It's going to be a physical game. We know, I mean, Olin's just had that thing, you know, kind of really kind of souped up and rolling. Obviously the last 2 games, not great, but they're kind of efficient. They're so just physical, like the way they are is so, you know, they're so deliberate and everything. And so I think it's a really good battle. So we'll see, but I can promise you this, you're not going to see Nana not giving it everything he's got. It sounds cliche. I know it does, but he really is the epitome of that.
No doubt, man. We're speaking with Brennan Williams of Go Lopes Radio. Brennan, wanted to ask you about this, man. One of the matchups I'm looking at in this game, GCU's offense versus UNM's defense, both struggling last game. GCU did not shoot well against UNLV, man. I don't have to tell you that. You got Jaden Henley, 5 of 16 from the field. Makai Williams, 4 of 10. UNM's defense has not been good, really the last 3 games. Gave up 86 to Utah State, 91 to Boise State, gave open a lot of 3-point shots. Who do you think has the advantage there, man? Do you think Makai Williams and Jaden Henley are able to have better nights shooting the basketball? Do they tear UNM up, or do you think the Lobos defense gets back on track?
Yeah, one thing I went back and watched a bunch from that game and your guys' game against Boise. And when GCU hosted Boise just a week ago before that, I said, Boise kind of goes as Dylan Andrews goes. And he had been trending and playing pretty good coming into GCU. And he was really he's had a great week. So this isn't a personal thing. He just was so bad at GCU, like almost a liability out there. Yeah. Didn't want to shoot. Almost like thinking Y words sort of stuff, like what is going on out there? Like he does not want to shoot, and he was so bad. And then he comes out, and he had 25 and then 31 against you guys. So he's really a difference maker for Boise. And I was kind of shocked to see him get it going against UNM, like you guys were talking about. But yeah, Saturday was really bad offensively. But the reality is, it's just kind of GCU's been average offensively, and that's average in the grand scheme of college basketball. I believe I had them 152, 153 on Ken Palm. They just haven't been that dynamic. And the guard play was so bad on Saturday. You just cannot win a game. And they got outplayed by Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn, who's an awesome player, not taking anything away from him. And then, UNLV's thin right now. Like I think they had 8.5 scholarship guys allegedly on Saturday, and the backup, essentially all kind of the backup rotation of guards, and Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn outplayed all of GCU's guards, like just flat out. And so you'd hope they'd come out with a little bit of, want to and get to, and, I guess we'll see. But I just think New Mexico is a great defensive team. I would expect them to probably get some sort of back on track. And I think, Nick, you're right. Like what's going to give, because both aren't trending great on that respective side of the ball. But I am, I'll be honest, I talked about it in my rapid reaction. Like I'm kind of concerned about this Lopes offense. They've shown they can pop and they can have a high ceiling. Yeah. You look at Utah State, they can get hot and make threes in bunches, but the floor for their offense is really low still. And so you can have the ceiling and that's great. And you can pop, 1 out of every 4 or 5 games. You're going to hope it's against the top teams, right? But the floor just has to be a lot higher on what you can get night to night. Henley obviously struggled. He's down to like 22% from 3, I believe. And, he kind of keeps taking them, and they're not great ones. And Mackay hasn't been necessarily efficient. He's been aggressive. So lots of improvement on the guard play. Caleb Shaw, we're expecting not to play. It sounds like not a good injury there. And I don't, indefinitely is kind of what we've been told. Brian Moore Jr. seems to be a little healthier, but man, the guard play's got to improve if they want to do something. We know in college basketball, you can have a big and you can do the whole inside out, whatever you want to say, old school sort of basketball thing. But we know in college basketball, it's all about those dynamic guards. And that's what wins you games down the stretch of the season. And right now, GCU's guards just haven't really been playing great. Yeah. And the offense is really struggling.
Yep. Yeah, for sure, man. Brendan, wanted to ask you about the atmosphere inside GCU Arena. Lobo fans think the pit is God's green earth, and it is. For us Lobo fans, it's got a lot of tradition, a lot of history. We usually get over 12,000 people in the building at least. There's been a couple times where it's been like 10 against New Mexico Highlands Division II. But GCU Arena, I got a ton of respect for the Havocs. Just tell us what that atmosphere is like, man. Do they have like certain chants that they chant? I've heard GCU, but just kind of paint a picture for us on what it's like inside the arena.
Well, I think you kind of almost start, and I was fortunate enough when I was actually in school, I was a Havoc leader myself. So back in the day, when a 9 p.m. tip maybe wouldn't drive me insane like they do now. But I had it back in the day, and it was awesome. And I think what makes it so special is, out of the gate, when GCU kind of set their vision for basketball, the in-game experience was built around the students. So you go to so many other places, right? And it's kind of built around maybe like optimization or, suites. And they're getting into a lot of that stuff, and it's coming along, and they're kind of working on, growing those legacy or alumni sort of fans. But GCU is unique in that they have like 2,000 seats, those 3 massive sections, and those are for students only. Like they give them some of the best seats in the whole house to be right there on top of the court. And that's, I think, just the intentionality upon which they do it, I think is what makes it so special. And you just at the end of the day, like they get to be so close and involved in the action, and they're not thrown in the corner and told to try to make an impact there. They're given a ton of freedom, and I think a ton of investment as well, which is really cool. And so it's legit, like it's loud. You kind of take what the students do and then you combine that. GCU at the end of the day, they play the music loud, like they're just going to. So if you don't like loud noises or loud music, probably not an evening for you, or maybe bring a massive pair of headphones, but it's really loud. It's going to be loud all game. Like they don't really, the ebbs and flows that maybe, the legacy, fans at the pit might have when they feel out of game and they know the times to stand. Like the students are just going to do it all game long. Like they just flatline, until they leave. And when they're outside, they're loud. When they're running inside, they're loud. And when they're leaving the arena, they're loud. So it really is special, and they just care. Like that's, I think, one big thing that matters with the students is they want them there. They want them involved. They give them a ton of freedom. And they're just, I think at times it is hard because there's so many people, or sometimes the chance almost like, on one side or this side, so it does get a little chaotic in that sense. But I think there's something like organic and awesome about that, where it's not like this choreographed, orchestra sitting out there. Like it's just kind of a beautiful chaos that, their only goal is they just want GCU to win. So it is really special. It's just really loud. Like it's an all around very loud experience. I don't know how, obviously I've watched plenty of GCU home games on TV, over the last few years, but I don't know how it's coming through on some of these Mountain West broadcasts, but it's absolutely going to be a lot louder than probably what you hear on the TV.
For sure. Eric?
Yeah. Brandon, I want to talk to you about F.A. Demerol against the Lobos in the last matchup. He finished with 3 points, but he's been on somewhat of a heater in his last couple games. If you look at the last 4 games or last 3 games, he puts up 14 points at Nevada. He puts up 16 in a win over Boise State. They knocked off the Broncos 86-69 in Phoenix. 9 points against Air Force, but then he finished with 10 against UNLV. I mean, can you talk to us about just kind of his impact as of late for this team? Because he's a 7-1 freshman, kind of another key freshman, part of that class in the Mountain West that's kind of turning a lot of heads. Yeah. But he's not a guy that's talked about a lot, but I know in just some of the games he's had a really big impact, not only with his frame, but his ability to kind of finish around the basket, his European style of play. But he's been playing really well, and it's kind of a nice 1-2 punch to put alongside Owusu Nane.
Yeah, I think you got to go all the way back to like August, because, he's playing in U19s. There were some visa issues. And I mean, it's really tough, right? Because it is a business, right? Like we don't need to sit here and act like college sports isn't this massive kind of enterprise, but you do have to kind of think about this in kind of personal terms, right? He's 19 years old, flies halfway across the country to lift up, all of his life and then just place it on this college campus. And, in not his first language. And he gets there, 3 or 4 months after the rest of the team gets there. Has to start kind of figuring things out, right? And it's just tough. Like, and I did feel bad kind of at the start of the season. I hated telling Lopes fans, like, give the guy a little bit of a break or a little bit of grace, but it's like, you're going to see this guy develop throughout the season. And I think we're starting to see that. He's starting to get a lot more comfortable. You got to keep in mind the difference in the overseas game and the game here. Here's just going to be a little more kind of clunkier and tight, and you're just going to have bigger bodies around you. And so I think what we've seen is a few things. One, he's just gotten better and more comfortable. Like that's without a doubt. He's just playing better. And that just comes with time. It's like familiarity with the staff, familiarity with the guys, and, the guards getting him the ball. And then I think the second thing is, he excels so much more when GCU can provide like any shooting. And I'm not even talking about great shooting. Like, if they can just be, you can look up Ken Palm right now, and it's going to be pretty ugly. I can tell you right here. They're probably around, 321st in the country right now in shooting the three. GCU is. So when I say providing any shooting, I'm literally meaning like average shooting. If they can shoot 35%, it sometimes feels like a miracle from 3. But when they do that, you have to think of the downstream effects of that. It's a little bit of spacing. And you think of the game he's so used to playing that's, a little more spaced out and perimeter oriented, even as big guys. He comes from that game. And so I think what we've seen is when GCU is able to maybe get certain lineups, maybe spread things out, when Nana's able to hit some threes as kind of, playing with him, that changes everything. Like when he gets a little bit more space, he's so much more comfortable. He doesn't have guys constantly, 3 or 4 guys digging in and being really physical. He can be a lot different player. And so you're seeing those moments where he has those really good stretches of maybe just comfortability combined with him getting better. And you're seeing these stretches. It goes from, okay, we see 2 or 3 plays. We're like, wow, that looks really good. And then, he has a bad play, but you're seeing those stretches for a more prolonged time. And the hope is, maybe even in the next few weeks, we could see, more development and we could see more from him. Like when you watch the tape, he can handle out on the perimeter. Like he has a jumper. He gets out in transition. So, we haven't seen a lot of that quite yet, but, I don't know if we'll get that this year, but he really is a special player. And the big thing at the end of the day, guys, is he doesn't lay the ball up. Like he'll only lay the ball up if he has at least one body in between him. Otherwise, he will be dunking the ball. And so I think that's a really big deal that he can kind of finish strong. And I think he's another guy who's got to prove it a little bit again, against New Mexico. So hopefully a little bit of a get back game from him and a little bit of like confidence rising. But he's got to be physical and he's got to just kind of make that physical impact and not be scared of contact.
Yeah, I have one more question, then I'll pass it back over to Nick. But I do want to make a point to UNM fans that are tuning in now. This GCU team has been a little, I wouldn't say consistent is the right word, but they play really well against really good teams, right? They have wins over the top of the Mountain West right now. They have a win over Utah State, win over San Diego State, win over Boise State. And then you kind of drop down and have a questionable loss to UNLV. So that's what I'm talking about, like with the inconsistency. But when things are going well for GCU, things are going really well. And the pieces are all falling into place. And one of those pieces that has kind of come in, and we talked about him on the first time that we chatted with you on our show, and Brian Moore, the transfer from Norfolk State, who was coming over as like the mid-major player of the year. He's played a lot of key minutes. He's actually had some really big games. I think he had 20 points against Utah State, really kind of carried the torch there. How has he been playing lately? And is he kind of the key to kind of taking this team maybe over the hump, or maybe a combination of him and Henley? How does that look?
Yeah, everything makes a lot more sense when he's playing and when he's playing well. He had a hammy injury. I think that happened at Fresno. And so then they had to go at Nevada, and he missed the Nevada game. And that was, if you know anything about Brian Moore, he's bounced around a lot, kind of a college basketball lifer, had to get it himself, right? He's not the biggest guy. He's a guard from New York, so about as tough as it gets in the basketball world. And, he could have gone a lot of places where he would be getting a lot more shots. And, maybe he could get a lot more highlight reel stuff, but he really does want to win. Obviously, we know, listen, GCU, they invest in their team. So we don't need to, it's not like he is, I can promise you, probably pretty well compensated there. But from a on-court play, right, and pride thing, like he's sacrificing a lot to do the little things, chase guards around. He is such an X factor. You guys are kind of spot on there. And the other thing is he's been shooting the ball well. And so he, I think now is actually GCU's leading 3-point shooter, something that has been incredibly touch and go for this group. Like it's been a struggle at times. Caleb Shaw, obviously missing some time, has been tough. Yeah. Brian Moore, 39.3%, kind of up where he was at Norfolk last year. And he's not a big volume guy, but when you're taking 1.5, 2 a game and you can make one of those, it kind of frees everything up. And so, yeah, when he's aggressive as well and he's getting to the basket, he's getting paint touches, it is a big difference maker also. Like he's just kind of a little bit of a pro and a veteran and kind of knows the right things to do. So he's not going to make the flashiest play or the craziest pass, but he's going to do a lot of the right stuff. And so it's really important. And it's why, when this thing mixes correctly, it looks really good. You've got this veteran and Brian Moore and Nana Wusu and they can do all those little things. And then, you've got guys, maybe stepping up and making threes, Dusty or whoever, they're making those shots freeing up the space. And then you're seeing FA develop. So they have all these guys that I don't want to say maybe have like 2 or 3 versions of themselves, but when they're all like the best version of themselves, GCU right now, they're a top 20 defense on KenPom, and then offensively, they can be pretty dynamic. I think they had 84 against Utah State. So yeah, it's just, he's kind of the perfect encapsulation of it. And if I got to be honest, right, I love me some Brian Moore Jr., but Dre Gibbs Lawhorn had every single guard they put on him in absolute purgatory. I mean, they could not guard him. They weren't getting through screens. They were, trailing him while he was coming off these screens. They're stuck behind him and they want to reach in, but they don't want to foul. And he'd go up and they'd foul him. And, then he'd get a step back 3. And all those guards, I think they got to be a little bit motivated. That film session had to be absolutely brutal. It looked tough in real time, but they could not guard Dre Gibbs Lawhorn. And so I think all those guards have to be super motivated coming into Wednesday because the film was bad. And Brian Moore Jr. is an awesome defender, like a really, really good defender. And they all got torched. And so, we'll see what sort of, bounce back he's got as well. But he's healthy now. Obviously, the hamstrings they can be kind of tough. The only thing that's good is time for that. So he was on a minutes limit for, maybe I think the first 2 games, but he's kind of back to normal now. So they need the best version of him because when he's shooting the ball and he's defending and he's kind of that pit bull, he's a massive, massive difference maker. And he's just a veteran. And I think that's something, hopefully that should matter on Wednesday. It certainly didn't matter in the first matchup, which was really disappointing to see a bunch of freshmen on New Mexico acting like 6-year veterans. Yeah. And then, GCU's older guys not really ready for the moment. You'd hope that's something that flips, but interested to see how he bounces and all the guards bounce back because there's some tough matchups on, for the guards for the Lobos.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you about that, Brennan. I think that's a great transition. The last time these teams played offensively, UNM had a very efficient night. Jake Hall, 22 points, 7 of 12 from the field. Only shot, I think, 3 threes in the ballgame. So, Uriah Tenet, Dayton Albury, both scored in double figures. I do think that UNM has some really dynamic ball handling, has an advantage athletically on the perimeter with Dayton Albury and Uriah Tenet. UNM, I think, shot pretty efficiently. I mean, they scored 87 points against GCU. So who do you think matches up on those guys? Like, give me a matchup for Jake Hall, Uriah Tenet. Like, how do you think GCU guards those guys?
Gosh, I don't know. Here, I just think about that game, and I don't know how hopefully they pull up the film from that game, and Jake Hall not even sweating, fixing his hair, and going right to the exact spot on the court he wants to get the ball in that mid-range area. GCU happily almost walking him over to the spot, getting behind him. They'd inbound the ball, no pressure on him. He'd get exactly what he wanted, and then he'd run down and get on defense and be smiling. That was massively disappointing. They gave him zero sort of fight, nothing. He was able to catch the ball wherever he wanted in his spots, get to whatever shot he wanted. He was able to, pass out and relocate and get to whatever spot he wanted. That was a massive disappointment in that game. Obviously GCU was in that game for, 25-ish minutes.
Yeah. That's true.
But man, that was just, I hate to say kind of unacceptable, but really shocking to see them, and part of it, that I was writing in the article we're doing, but part of it is, listen, if he gets those spots and you beat the heck out of him and you make it tough, obviously without fouling him, and he makes the shot, it's like, okay, whatever, that's fine. But what they did last game just was very strange. They just were not providing any resistance. And so I think overall, that's the first thing you got to look at. And a guy like Tenet, who, I find him really unique in an Olin system where it kind of feels like he gets the car keys and Olin's kind of like, I'm going to look away. And you can do whatever you want, but you're kind of on a short leash, but you can't literally do whatever you want. You can kind of do everything the exact opposite of the way I do things. But he lets him have that, and it does work. And Tenet kind of rewards him with that. But as a, what's he listed at? He's maybe listed at 6 feet, but I don't know about that with Tenet. I mean, obviously the athleticism's there, but you're telling me a 6 foot, freshman guard's going to come in if you're, Jaden Henley or Brian Moore Jr. and going to, give you that many problems, so I think there's some pride where you got to start there and some fight. But when you talk about matchups, it's really hard to talk about considering what we just watched with Dre Gibbs Lawhorn. They went Brian Moore Jr. to start. That didn't work. They went Mekhi Williams and he came off the bench. That didn't work. Dusty Stromer came off the bench. was falling for Dre Gibbs' Longhorn pump fakes. Like, so it's hard to, kind of say, like, they've got these options and guys that are good defenders. But they didn't do a great job against New Mexico, and they didn't do a good job on Saturday against a guard. Now, some of that's going to be a little bit different sort of style and looks, but I think those general principles apply. And so I don't know if, maybe they need to look at going Henley with just like the length. Yeah. I don't know, but with Hall, but that's kind of, to me, priority number one is just getting Hall out of his spots. Cause obviously he's really dynamic and really special, but got to make him work. And that, he didn't really have to work a whole lot in the first matchup. I think if we can probably just say that, being honest, he was very comfy. I was watching the post-game interview with him, and it was like, did he even play a basketball game, or he just looked like he was hanging out, So
right.
Yeah. Got to provide some resistance on that.
For sure, man. I can tell you this as a Lobo fan, I am super nervous for this game, considering how we're playing going into GCU Arena.
Yeah.
I really do think this is gut check time for Eric Olin's Lobos. It's all well and good to say the right things in the press conference, and they're saying all the right things. They want to get back to the drawing board, but this is a huge test on the road in one of the most difficult environments in all of college basketball. So I don't know, man. I'm not really sure how I'm feeling about it. I'm not trying to put you on the spot because I don't know how I feel about it, but are you leaning one way or the other? Does GCU get the win at home, or think the Lobos steal one from them?
Yeah, I think I'm going Lopes here. They've had some moments where you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this season potentially going to fall apart? You got the Youngstown State game, and it's like, oh my gosh, we did not just do that at home. And then you go to St. Louis, and now we have a little more hindsight on that. That St. Louis is very, very good, but that was just a disaster. And then you've got the Colorado State thing, right? So all these things have happened, but the Colorado State thing happened, and then 2 days later, they're in Boise. Essentially, they kind of threw that whole program into a wrench. The fans hating Leon Rice for what he's saying in the pressers. He's calling people out for not being there. So they were able to kind of galvanize themselves there. And I think you guys are right. Like, this team, when they are clicking and it's good, they are legitimately really good and awesome, this GCU team. And I think they're due for one of those really good games. Obviously, the Air Force, it's hard to gauge anything with Air Force, last week. But the Boise State before that was good. And then, the UNLV lapse. I don't know if there's some road woes there as well. There's been some chatter on our message board about, if you're not going to schedule tough in the non-conference and you're not going to go play tough road games, I don't know what you expect when you go on the road to UNLV. Like, you just might not be ready for something like that. So I don't know if it's a road woes thing or what it might be, but I do think I'm taking a Lopes bounce back here. One thing I was thinking about, I don't think this is a New Mexico disaster. I was looking through it a little bit, the two games. You get Utah State, and I think Utah State had their quick kind of, come to Jesus moment, right? Like, things went bad, and the UNLV game was obviously really bad after the GCU game. I think you just got them at the bad time. And then you could look at the Boise State game as, again, kind of, getting them at the wrong time as well. The Dylan Andrews kind of going nuts. I don't think it's a full-on disaster for the Lobos. I think they're going to play well. There's just something about that Eric Olin system and way where I've been impressed by what he's done this year, and I'm not doubting it anymore. So I think they're going to come out ready to go. I could even see him, coming out and throwing a good punch. I just think GCU, with the environment, and just the veterans. I think this was one of those like veteran Brian Moore, Nana Wusu Anane, right place, right time. Just stay the course. This thing's going to come your way sort of games. And I think they're going to be able to flush the UNLV thing and get that in the past and get back on track. And hopefully they, again, put on that New Mexico film, put on that UNLV film, because I think that'll motivate these guys. They're a veteran bunch, outside of kind of FA. So I think they'll be ready for the moment.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, this is the future of the Mountain West Conference. I think we're the two premier programs. So a healthy rivalry between our fan bases is just good for basketball, college basketball in the Mountain West. Last question for you, man. With the news breaking that North Dakota State is entering the Mountain West Conference as a football-only member, I thought I saw something on X, and you can't believe everything you read on X, but I thought I saw somebody post something about Gloria Navarez saying GCU should get a football program. Do you think a football program could be down the way for GCU sometime in the next 10 years?
Well, I'm glad it's that question. I thought you were going to put me on the spot with this Amari Bailey drama that's been going on here over the last week.
So we're going to ask you about that too.
I was like, maybe I am dipping out of here really quick. No. Yeah. So the football thing is tough, right? I think GCU's comfy with where they're at. You know, they've had plenty of opportunities, by the way. For football chatter's been there for, you know, essentially since, you know, President Mueller came over from University of Phoenix. Yep. The chatter's been there. And I just think there's too much infrastructure that comes with it. There'd just be so much time and investment and just stuff and drama. Now, here's the thing. GCU, listen, they've got a really good student base, so you'd have a pretty awesome environment.
Yep.
You know, there's a ton of talent locally. Obviously, you know, ASU has been able to kind of tap into that a little bit. But yeah, for the most part, I mean, it is kind of crazy. Like Phoenix has been a hotbed for a lot of really good teams. Like there's a lot of talent here. And so maybe there would be an opportunity there, but I would say really doubtful. You know, maybe if President Mueller were to retire, I don't know when that's going to happen, but someone else comes in that wants to be a little more football forward. Especially with how fluid things are in college sports right now, like, I don't know, like what if college football doesn't even exist in like 6 years and it exists in some weird other fashion that who the heck, like, I don't even know at this point. Right. So I think just with all that going on and the basketball side of things, you know, they're able to really invest in, you know, it does, you know, obviously we know football's the breadwinner, but they do love their other sports. Like they genuinely do. They set really tough expectations. They don't let any program go to the wayside and struggle for multiple years without, you know, kind of really looking at it in the mirror. I think they have a big plan coming up for women's basketball on an investment side of things. So I think that's kind of something to come. I think they have a big vision there. Yeah. But it would be awesome. I'm not going to lie, but I think it'd just be too much infrastructure and stuff that you just have to already have. Like you got to have a stadium already ready to go. Like the permits and this and that, you know, so then we're talking 2 or 3 years out to have a stadium that's even viable. Yeah. If it could happen in a, you know, snap of a finger, it'd be really awesome. I tell you that. And they'd get a ton of energy, a ton of investment, and a ton of excitement around the program. I know that for sure. And I know they best foot forward, but no football for now. I think, you know, maybe a new regime comes in, but for now I wouldn't expect it.
Fair. Eric?
Yeah, and we're not going to let you off the hook that easy, Brendan. I do want to talk about the Amari Bailey thing. Yeah. News broke, was it last week, that Amari Bailey, he formerly at UCLA, he gets drafted in the 2023 NBA draft. He ends up signing with the Charlotte Hornets on a 2-way contract. I actually think he played in 10 games, but he will be there Wednesday on an official recruiting visit. They're going to pitch him their vision, their plans to kind of bring him in. Obviously, he would need a judge's ruling in order to come back and play at the collegiate level. But with the way things have been going recently, I think there was actually a ruling today for an Alabama center that got denied by a judge. So he would have to go kind of through the same due process. But I mean, when you saw that and you being so closely tied with GCU, what was that reaction like?
I think the first thing was, you know, there's plenty of stuff out there. If people wanted to say, you know, find a reason to not like GCU, you know, there's all that stuff out there. And there's crowds that are super into it, right? Like that just kind of depends where you're at and how you look at things. So my first thought was, oh my gosh, everyone it's like the world versus GCU now. That was literally my first thought. My honest, like personal thoughts, and I've got two, I think really important things on this. So one would be, I personally for the sport, I hate it. Like I hate it. Yeah. You know, it's pretty hard on the Baylor situation and the Alabama situation. And I'd have the same thoughts for this. Like, I think it's really bad for college basketball. Just kind of full stop. I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and like mumble and try to like justify or whatever. Like it would suck for the sport, right? If we start going down that path. Two things I'll say. One, GCU is very well connected in Southern California. Really, really well connected. I even joke and call them the Southern California Lopes. If you go up and down the roster, you can kind of start doing some math there. GCU will have really good connections and setups in Southern California for the foreseeable future. Obviously, you could look to see where Amari Bailey's from. So I'd say not a shock there, just because there's going to be a natural connection there. And then the second part of it that I think does make this kind of tough, and this is, I'm not standing up for anything, but one part of this that I think is important, these coaches, right? Like, it's a binary sort of thing. Like, it's a 1 or 0. So if you're a coach, did you win games and like do your job? And you can't say, well, we won a little bit, but it's like, it's okay. If you win, you keep your job. If you don't, you get fired. Right. So I think where that comes into play is if you're a coach, what are you going to say? Like, no, we didn't look at everything and say, we didn't look into that. Maybe we should have, someone else did. And if you don't win, right, we know what ends up happening. Like, that's how this stuff works. So I think that's one interesting point to think about. Like, if you're the coaches kind of in charge of doing this, like, you kind of got to like do whatever you can to win. And you can argue the system stinks and we hate that it's there. But I think that's also the reality. And then the last part of it, and I quoted the article and my thoughts on it that I actually wrote for you guys, which ironically enough was titled Unapologetic.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't want to say this like too brashly and too rudely. GCU doesn't really care about, like, they've always done things differently. The way they do academics is like a lot differently. And people have kind of made fun of them for it or talked about this or whatever. They haven't really cared. Like, and you can call it like an insane arrogance or whatever it is, but it's like, you got to keep in mind, we were on here, right, talking when GCU moved to the Mountain West, like, this is a program playing D2 games 13 years ago. And they've won an NCAA tournament game. So you got to be a little bit like arrogant to kind of succeed in sports, especially college sports, college athletics. Like, you kind of got to be willing to, I don't want to say be the bad guy, but I just think they are not going to care. Like, they're going to invest and they're going to do everything that's possible to try to win. And if he commits to GCU and he's able to get cleared, he'll play. If, they're going to sell him on a vision and talk with him. But if he doesn't get cleared, then so be it. They'll be on to the next thing. And yeah, so they make people uncomfortable, and I know they do. And I mentioned this in the article, right? I'm not here as an independent media member. I don't carry any water for GCU. I'll just straight up say, I don't think it's good for the sport. But that's how GCU operates, like, unapologetic. They're going to do what they have to do to win. That's all they want to do is win. And, if obviously I wouldn't say a few people, but the Twitter people, they're not going to be like, oh, you know what, let's not do this because some people aren't going to like it online. Like, that's just not how GCU operates. And so, it'll be an interesting thing to watch unfold. I can say this enough, on your guys' show, like, again, they're well connected in that scene and in that situation. So if it's something where he does get cleared, I'd feel really good about GCU, potentially getting his services if he's cleared. But, a lot of work between now and then. There's gonna be a lot of scuttlebutt online, and so be it. But yeah, he'll be at the game Wednesday, and GCU will kind of do their usual vision casting. So yeah, there it is, Boise. Yeah. And that's great. That's what you got to do.
I will say on top of that, it's really bold, right? And you have to be bold in today's day and age. You have to continue to challenge the system because the system's so in flux right now that you don't know what you're going to be able to get away with. And if you're going to compete, it kind of puts GCU in the limelight too. So if you're looking at kind of marketing and trying to steal a little bit of the spotlight and kind of attract players that way, because, hey, this school's willing to kind of go out of their way to make it work. Maybe I might give them a second look. It kind of works in that fashion too. And
I was going to say one final comment on this, and it's a weird thing to, like, I think, talk about and conversate about. I think we can all say here, having been around, followed, fans of college sports, they have had their fair share, college sports, of characters and bad people and that have done very bad things. I'm not saying this is like justifying anything, but it's like, I do think if you just take a deep breath, like there's a lot of bad stuff that people have done in college sports that unfortunately maybe has even gotten punished, different situations. I'm not naming anything or going to name schools or situations or anything, but you can kind of just look it up, right? Like I do think having a deep breath about like, okay, we've got a guy playing who played in the G League and this guy's coming back. Should he maybe have some more shame about coming back to play college basketball? Probably, but it's like, if you really just grand scheme it, like there's some bad stuff that's happened in college sports. And I don't think like, it is what it is. But I personally not crazy about it. I don't think it's good for the sport. I'm not going to be hard on Baylor and Alabama and then be like, go GCU, go, like do whatever you got to do. But I don't like it, but that's what they're going to do. They want to win and it's full stop. So that's just how GCU rolls.
Well, Brendan, as always, man, we enjoy having you on the show. I know that we've been working on a lot of stuff kind of behind the scenes too. We have some articles on the way. I know Nick helped you out with a preview. You helped us out with the preview. I also got a Q&A kind of rundown that we'll probably publish in the next day or so, kind of talking about GCU hoops. So, man, we appreciate everything that you do, covering GCU basketball, for always willing to come on our show. Any final thoughts from you before we call it a night?
No, I think just, this Mountain West, man, is awesome. There was part of me that on Saturday had a good chuckle after the UNLV game. Like it really was that crazy. Like, you look at that Fresno UNLV game on Tuesday. Like, I don't know if you guys saw any of that. Absolute absurdity. What happened for GCU Nevada the week before? It's like, sometimes you just have to chuckle at this stuff. It really is like unlike any other conference. Crazy stuff's happening. I think we have a regular 7 p.m. start on Wednesday, if I recall, maybe an 8 p.m. at worst. So we're going to avoid the 9 p.m. complete chaos slot that seems to happen at that time. But no, really looking forward to it, guys. Appreciate you always having me on. It's really awesome, the support we've gotten. And, I think the big thing for Wednesday is, we're really excited, I think, for this, second leg of the first iteration, I guess, if you will, of this GCU UNM. It sounds like Lobo fans are coming in very hot, which is great. I think that's really awesome. And we should have an awesome environment on Wednesday. And it's kind of one of those, like, this is kind of what college sports is about, even at times where Amari Bailey's going to be on a visit and we're hearing about lawyers and injunctions and this and that. Like we are, this is kind of what college sports is about and why I think we spend so much time on it. So really excited for Wednesday. And are you guys coming out or what? We need you guys out here in Phoenix.
Yeah, we wanted to, man, work and family obligations, similar to, I think, your situation. Yeah, man, just couldn't swing it, unfortunately. But we will be we're in this thing together for the long haul, at least for the foreseeable future. So we will make it out to GCU Arena. Can't wait to see the atmosphere, man.
Awesome.
Yep. Cool. Well, Brendan, appreciate you, man, coming on. Appreciate everyone tuning in to another episode of the Pit Press Live. Just want to again thank our sponsors, Neil at Affordable Solar, Southwest Spray Foam up in Santa Fe, Capital Ford dealership up in Santa Fe, and then Quick Lane, which is the service provider for any Ford dealership in like the Albuquerque, Rio Rancho, and Santa Fe markets. And as of today, one of our newer sponsors over at Bourbon House, which is tied to Dirty Bourbon. Some more stuff coming on the way from them. But for Nick Nunez,
sending care packages to Phoenix, or what's going on there? I'm kidding.
If you guys win, man, that may be appropriate,
Yeah, there you go. For Eric Moulton, Nick Nunez, and Brendan Williams, you guys have been watching the Pit Press Live.